welcome everybody who's joining us for our little hangout here. Obviously, the topic. Hey, Tracy. Obviously, the topic.
Hey.
Hey there. The topic is branding and Detroit branding, and we have Erik with us, who's the filmmaker who created Lemonade Detroit. I want to welcome you guys, Erik, Tracy, and Yodette, to our first.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hi Tracy, hi Yodi.
To our first
Eric.
first little hangout here. So when we talk about branding, Erik, this is what comes to mind to me because I had this conversation about a year ago with some other professionals about branding Detroit. And one thing I noticed about Detroit, obviously we've tied ourselves to Hockey Town, we've tied ourselves to Motown, we've tied ourselves to the automotive industry. So all these things have sort of defined what Detroit is and that sort of thing. But the catch is, when those industries fail, does Detroit fall with it? You know what I'm saying? I mean, obviously Detroit has its own cultural community, its own thriving industry, sub-industries or communities. But when we tie ourselves to these other type of things and they fall or fail, that kind of does that put a tarnish on the city of Detroit? And I want to use that to segue into the article you wrote with Forbes. So if you,
I would, and thank you very much for doing this with us. This is a blast. Modern technology is pretty incredible.
Right.
I would take that down to a sort of microcosmic level before, and just kind of use a personal example, one person example, and then you can sort of build upon that and extrapolate the whole city from this. But if somebody loses their job, say you worked in one industry your whole life, and then you lose your job, what does that do to your brand? Right, and if the circumstances are out of your control, which for most of the case in Detroit, that's true. Does that make you? What does that make you? Personally, I worked in advertising for 15 years, and got laid off from that position. But that doesn't mean I'm less creative. It doesn't mean I'm not still a good marketer, not still a good brander. It doesn't mean I'm not still a great writer or a good creative thinker. It just means that a circumstance was beyond my control that I ended up losing a position. Sometimes people get fired and it is their fault, but I think the vast majority of layoffs, that's not the case, right? So what else can I do with those skills, right? And I chose to go and become a filmmaker. I think you can take that same analogy and apply it on a much grander scale to a city, right? Just because a city that was identified by Motown or was identified by the automotive industry, when those industries start to sort of contract and lay people off, or this, now buildings start to become abandoned or factories close down, does that make Detroit less of a creative, industrial, engineering, design city? And the answer is absolutely not. It still has all those things. It just doesn't have the industry isn't as strong to support what's already there. So I don't think the brand is defined by the talent and the people who are there, and that's something I think Yodit is really passionate about. The brand is the people, and the identity is the people, and the sort of the product are the industries, and Yodit, please feel free to speak more about that.
Yeah. Thanks, Erik. So Erik and I talk about this a lot, like the city as a noun or, as an entity versus the people that comprise it and make it up. And I think hands down the city, the people, of Detroit are its brand and are eclectic and different and unique skills and characteristics. So, I worked for a long time with entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs will frequently think of their product or the thing they have or have made or that they're really talented at as their brand, when really, for the most part, their unique value proposition, their individual skill sets, that kind of thing, are what bring a brand to their company. It's what people believe to be true about the product or service that you're offering. So when I think about Detroit, I don't think about it as one big pancake, brand. I think about it as the 700 50,000 unique brands that exist in the city. The other thing we have to be cognizant of is because we had such a unique industry in this region for so long that employed so many people, we sort of started to align ourselves or associate our individual brands with our work. And all of us, I mean, I've been laid off too, Erik, and you do have a moment where if you, like me, poured your whole self into your work, when you lose that job, you absolutely feel like you've lost your worth. And so I think part of what Lemonade Detroit is about, part of the conversations that, you and I have, Erik, but also you and Khalif, you and I are starting to talk about is, how do we switch that paradigm? How do we have people own the brand, the city's brand? And that would be my dog. No. Sorry, guys.
So listen, Tracy, I know you're a business owner in Detroit. You've been empowered lately because of the creative energy that we've witnessed at TEDx and other events in Detroit. What's your opinion in terms of being an entrepreneur and contributing to the brand of Detroit? Because, all of a sudden, with technology, everybody's their own brand now, with Facebook, with Twitter, with you can create a blog, and we've seen a bunch of bloggers in the city of Detroit taking pictures and doing different things. Tracy, what's your opinion on being an individual and a business owner and contributing to the positive brand and image of Detroit?
I think what's happening in Detroit was inevitable. I think that it was necessary. I was laid off too, and were I not laid off from my job, I probably would have still been in a job that I hated. So it kind of forced me to have to do the thing that I was naturally good at, and I had to find a way to make money for it to make money from it so I could live. And I think that's a testament to what's going on in the city too, politically and socially. Some change had to be made in order for us to get to the very root of what we are, which is a great, historical, rich city. And I like what's going on now because it's kind of like the creative class has emerged as thinkers and doers in what's going on in the city right now. It's like what the creative class is doing has highlighted what lies at the root of what Detroit City is. And before, it was largely ignored. The creative class was not an important piece of the city, but now it is. Now it's emerging as an industry. And I think that's a very necessary part of Detroit. I think that's part of what makes Detroit great, and will be part of what people will see that's magnificent about the city is the creative class. I think. What
an awesome point that is. I mean, like, not all of a sudden there's the creative class has a seat at the table with the automotive industry and the music industry. Like, now we can, we are a vital part. I live there. I don't even live in Detroit, but like the creative class is like a vital part of what is of what's, you have a say in what administrators and Khalif, and what your office is trying to do. Now we are moving forward, and we're doing it in a way that involves us and invites us and makes us part of the map of the future.
Yeah, it really gives people permission to be entrepreneurs, right? And to be thinkers. And we have a region that was heavily populated by employees, right? So this allows somebody to take their natural God-given gift, and both of you on the Hangout represent that, to take your natural gift and to translate it. My God.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm cheating, like this, because they don't tell you this, before you're a grown-up. They tell you, go to school, go to work, retire, and get a pension. But they don't tell you to do what you love,
right,
and that you can be happy, and that you can make money, and that you can be a business owner doing what you love.
And by the way,
sometimes.
And by the way, in doing all that, you're making your environment a better place. You're making your city a better place. You're your sort of natural gift to the world becomes, you're affecting your little circle of people around you who see that you're a happier, more fulfilled person, right? And they tell two friends, and they tell two friends. I mean, that kind of thing just rubs off, and you're making your city a better place by being, I don't want to use the word selfish, but being self-concerned.
Yeah.
It makes the world a better place.
Well, I mean, this really is not to.
We've hijacked it. We've hijacked this call.
Yes, we have. But this is activation at its finest. This is activation. This is citizen activation at its finest. When each of us who is called to his or her highest self walks into that, we now have real change occurring.
This is true. I think one of my goals here at the city since I got here a year and a half ago, I just noticed so many different individual bloggers online promoting the city. I was like, man, if I could just unite the tribes, let's all have one banner, which is Detroit. Hey, we have rich content, video clips and different things like this. Hey, you guys can spread them. It worked a little bit. Still people are. It's almost like the Wild Wild West in a sense, in terms of creativity and blogs and individuals doing their own thing, but all in the name of promoting the city of Detroit. And that's been the beauty of it all, Erik, tell us a little bit about the article that you did in Forbes magazine.
Yeah. So I wrote a piece about I was invited recently to become a writer, a blogger for Forbes, and I wrote a piece about what is Detroit's brand, and so I think so many people, and not just with Detroit, but any brand, any product, any city, any person, you don't know about that product or city or person or brand until you have direct experience with it, right? I mean, you really don't know. I mean, you can be communicated, people can tell you about it, the city can do a marketing campaign, Chrysler can do a Super Bowl commercial with Eminem in it, but until you actually drive that car, or until you actually visit that city and actually become, tactile with it and see it and feel it and talk to people and actually be in the middle of it, you can't really communicate what that brand is, or you can't really feel it for yourself. And so there's a lot of journalism and a lot of filmmaking being done about Detroit, and a lot of bloggers who are, pro and con, Detroit and its people. But, I think people form an impression, people who've never been to the city form an impression before they ever really experience it. So they think they know Detroit's brand because of a Chrysler commercial or because of a blog or because of a movie, when in actuality you don't. And you have to go there to experience it firsthand. And that's really what the point of the article was about. You don't know Apple's brand until you actually play with an iPad, right? And you don't know Detroit until you experience the richness of the city and its people. I mean, that's really what the whole point of the article was.
And what was your experience when you came to Detroit? Because here's my my thinking, and this happens a lot. People come to Detroit from out of state, out of the country, and what they seem to find, and there is artistic value in this. They seem to find a lot of artistic value in Detroit's ruins. The past buildings, or the past of Detroit, or architecture that's still standing, that's vacant. They seem to find a lot of artistic value in those things, and then they take that back and say, hey, look at Detroit, check out Detroit. It was once a great city, now it's crashed, but all this beauty and this architecture still exists. So so when you came here, what did you see? What did you take to and say, oh man, I gotta write about this?
Right. So you can't. Part of me can't fault the people who see the beauty in the blight, right? I mean, part of me, it's like, because it hits you over the head if you don't live in it, in the middle of it, if you don't see it every day. You kind of you see it, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, like you can feel the ghost walking around, right? You can feel the energy of what once was, right? And that's profound to people. And it just so happens that there are so many people who come in and experience that for the first time, and they all want to write about it or make a movie about it, right? And it's that story is okay. It's been told, right? For me, it wasn't so much about the architecture or about the seeing a building that that used to have 1,000 people in it. That's now sort of burnt out.
That's right.
It wasn't so much that.
That's
It was, my first experience in Detroit was in December of 2009. And so I made a film, a first Lemonade, which Tracy, I need to show you because it's all about, it's your story, right?
Okay.
The first Lemonade about a bunch of people who got laid off, 16 people who got laid off and turned to what they were good at and what they enjoyed to find new careers and new meanings for their lives, right? That's your story, Tracy.
Yeah.
So, and I was showing that to a room of about 400 people in Detroit who had been laid off, and I had never been to Detroit before. And my impression coming into the city was this was downtrodden. They weren't gonna, these people, the people in the room were gonna feel like the movie was too Pollyanna, that I wouldn't get it, that I'd have to talk a bunch of people off the ledge, and it would be this real bummer session, right? And the movie itself is a pretty positive message. But what I found was, in this room of 400 people who were unemployed in Detroit, was that they all had this incredible optimism about moving forward. All their sleeves were rolled up, and they were all like, "Okay, what's next? We've been through worse, right?" And that was like, that really threw me. Like, I really was not expecting to walk into a room that would inspire me. I thought I was really going to be like, I was gritting my teeth, like, oh God, this is going to be hard. But I felt so enlightened. I felt so fulfilled after sharing this film and experiencing their optimism that I couldn't help but feel that same optimism, and that's what kind of led me to want to make a follow-up about the city of Detroit. So, for me, it was my brain coming in was this sad, depressed, lonely place, but when in reality I walk in, it was like, man, you guys have this energy that I wish I could bottle.
Hey, Khalif, back to your point about the number of bloggers that you started to see. I think at some level, people sort of got tired of the story that was being told about Detroit when their experience was different, and they wanted to tell their own story. And the same is true with Erik. It's often said that 90% of people's reality is perception, right? So Detroit is not a bunch of buildings. It's not a bunch of burnt out buildings, or it's not exclusively the auto industry. It is, again, a series of individuals and people that are here, and those who cheaply and easily told stories that really a search engine produced for them, right? Like, this is the Detroit story, and I say that with some degree of respect, that journalism has changed so much that they would go to, you type in Detroit and you go with what you find. Mm-hmm. What I really admired about Erik is that after that experience of screening Lemonade originally, he took the time. See, that's what we have to do, is take the time to find the stories, to find the individuals. And if you have an opportunity to see Lemonade Detroit, and I've seen it, a million times, I weep when I hear those are people. You know what I'm saying? Like, we get so caught up in the engine, the machine called media, that we forget that these are people. So to the point about bloggers in the city, and of course it's easy to sort of come in, look at the buildings, tell a story, and go away. And of course many of the people in our city were so hurt by the Dateline report, and various horrible stories, because we know that's not our truth. So then people get like, hold on a minute, I'm gonna tell, let me tell my real story. And Erik is just one of those, but there are a number of people who have decided as activated citizens to tell the real.
One thing that has gotten me over the years, and Erik, we could talk about this in terms from an ad agency's perspective. You see a car commercial, it's not shot in Detroit, but they're headquartered here. I don't know how many Ford commercials over the years, or Chrysler or General Motor commercials I've seen where they've actually, they're touting, their automobile, but it's not in Detroit, and now we see a swing after the Chrysler ad of, I've seen some other commercials and they're shot in Detroit. What type of, Eric, what type of role can the ad agencies play in terms of products that are made in Detroit, and they're actually shooting the commercials here and then showing these other positive sides of Detroit? So what can the ad agencies contribute to that?
Ad agencies are only concerned about one thing, right? And they want to sell product, right? I mean, even even Chrysler, I'm a huge fan of that spot. I mean, that commercial was like a manifesto for my film, right? It really was just about it. Really, but at the end of the day, that was about what's gonna sell more Chrysler 200s.
That's right.
How they're repositioning themselves so they can build their brand, and they're tying their brand into Detroit's brand so they can sell more product, right? I mean,
right.
It's the ends justifying the means a little bit. I mean, if it makes the world feel better about Detroit and it makes Detroiters feel better about Detroit, great. And that wasn't their goal.
Right.
But
one thing that just really I liked in that commercial was when the narrator said, "Yeah, Detroit's been down and this and that, but we're coming back." It was like the guy's voice, the whole tone, and everything was really interesting. They did a great job.
But Holly, I feel like, and I tell people, in order to know what Detroit is, you either have to be from here or know somebody that's from here and have come and visited them and stayed for a while. Because you cannot read about Detroit. You have to have a Detroit experience.
That's right.
I call Detroit the ugly beautiful. When you look at the news and you look outside, it is ugly. But right in the center of that ugliness is everything beautiful. And that's the stuff you cannot write about. You have to kind of know it. Like
Chaz Miller calls it pretty ugly.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I live in the Cass Corridor, one of the ugliest parts, supposedly one of the ugliest parts of the city. But I have the most amazing view, and I get the most amazing sun in my living room every day. And when I go outside, the indigent people outside, the homeless people know me by name. They greet me with a hug. They give me love. They give me smiles. A man who lives next door to me in the little homeless shelter, I guess, he brings me stuff. He gave me some socks the other day. I mean, I love that. And those are the things that the bloggers who are not from here and the advertising agencies that are just intent on making a profit, those are the things that they cannot put on display.
Well, I just have to give you a shout out for calling it the Cass Corridor, not Midtown.
Yeah, it's not Historyville, it's Cass Corridor. It's still a corridor.
It is the Cass Corridor, and ain't nothing wrong with that.
And the reason why Detroit 187 was unsuccessful is because it did not have people on staff that were from Detroit, who loved Detroit, who could be consultants for their scripts and for their director, who could put the pulse and the beat of what Detroit is and what people are into that program.
That's a good point, Tracy. That's a really good point.
If they had people who were from Detroit that were helping to write those scripts and were using those people, like, we move and shake differently than people anywhere else in the country. So in order to grasp that, in order for the world to know and see that, you have to have that kind of element on set. And it was apparent and visible that they didn't. And that's why a lot of Detroiters didn't gravitate to that show because it was so unauthentic. And Detroit is known for authenticity. So, when you talk about Detroit, you have to talk about that. You have to actually see that. You have to live that. So I think that's an element missing from advertising and entertainment and bloggers when they talk about Detroit and they're not from here.
NYPD Blue in Detroit is still NYPD Blue, right?
Right. It's still NYPD Blue. Yeah.
Hey, but Tracy, let me maybe, if I can, take this a step deeper. That there's a whole subculture that exist in Detroit that's been doing what we're talking about. You know what I mean? Been positive, been connecting with community, been activated, been making things happen. I mean, when the notorious B.I.G. talks about stink pink gators,
Right.
Detroit players, you know what I'm saying? Like anybody that spent any amount of time here, like I don't feel like this is a new epiphany. Something
It's not.
new that's happening. I do feel like, and people get after me because I bring race up, but I do feel like we have, first of all, I feel like race and the divisions of race, and they're particularly prevalent even in the news today. And this hits home for me as an African-American woman because I am keenly aware of the fact that this is my village. I own it.
Mm-hmm.
Each and every one. You know what I mean? Like these are, we birthed this nation. So to some degree, I feel like, yeah, other people might be finding Detroit, but this has been my Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
This has been, I have had the privilege of having for years, not just in this decade, but for 20, 30, well, I'm not quite 30, but yes, I am. Yes, I am. Don't let me lie. But, this is not new to me. This brand is not new to me. It's becoming sexier, if you will. It's becoming, maybe more mainstream. But this is not new.
So to Khalil's point, I mean, I think it's like, now how do we communicate that to the rest of the world? Like, if and Tracy, you're absolutely right. You can't do it justice by writing about it. Readers can't understand it by reading it or seeing a film about it or watching a piece on the news about it. But those elements are necessary, right? I mean, people in the media they just need to get the story right.
Right.
They need to do everything Yodit was talking about and you're talking about to get people to experience that on a superficial level, and maybe that makes them want to come and experience it a little bit more if they're outside the city.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, everything great and wonderful about me, I have because I'm from Detroit.
Absolutely.
That is what, and a friend of mine told me I was limiting myself. I'm like, no, this is the truth.
That's right.
I could not do what I do and be who I am were it not for the experiences I've had in this city. I am Detroit. This is part of me. I got Detroit running through my veins, and I love every single thing about it.
You better preach, girl.
There is no shame. When I talk about Detroit, there is no shame. There is no embarrassment. There is no apprehension. This is my place. I know Detroit, and the reason why I can do that is because I know Detroit. I know its history. And I know the people, and I know what Detroit has been through from a historical context from the beginning.
That's right.
We suffered adversities from the very beginning, and every time we come back greater and greater. So what's happening now in the city is a testament to our history and our culture and who we are. It's like, this is nothing. We can do this. This is nothing.
Right.
We've been doing this, and we do it better and better every single time. I'm just looking forward to what happens as a result of what has happened. I feel it. There's a fever going on in the city, I'm talking to other people like, hey, y'all feel it? Because I can feel it. I'm excited about it.
Well, Khalil, you might need to. Khalil, I'm sorry. You might need to edit this part out. But man, don't let the state come in and screw up that momentum.
For the film initiative you're talking about?
No, I mean for the city and all the momentum that you guys are building to have the state come in and appoint a whatever it's called,
emergency manager.
Like just that would just like, okay, nice try guys, let the big boys come in. Like that makes me angry. I'm not even from there.
So tell me, Erik, as a follow-up, as we begin to wrap up to Lemonade Detroit, how can you continue that? What's your next step in this process of your film and highlighting Detroit in it?
So this has been a 2-year labor of love for me so far, and it's all the stories that I shot almost 2 years ago, that I filmed almost 2 years ago, they have they've gained a lot more attention, and they're becoming more household names, and people in the film are becoming they're told often. The stories are told often, and my next job is to find more stories, and I'm so glad I met you, Tracy, because I want to talk to you some more. Find more stories from people who they haven't been on the cover of the New York Times yet. Some of them might not even have email addresses. My job, and this requires funding and all that stuff, and thank God for UD. But we are. My job is to come in here and be on the street a little more and talk to people who aren't taking the world by storm just yet, but they're making huge differences in their communities, and I need to find those people.
Okay.
Hey, Khalif.
You need to come to the Cast Corridor one day. You and I should make a date, because I live next to a place called the Dog House, and it's one of those rent-a-room by the week places, and everybody in there gets a check for something. They either get a check because they got a mental problem, or they're an alcoholic or a drug addict. But they are the most, living in the Cast Corridor has one theme, and that's the theme of community and love. These people here have nothing. But every time I leave out of my house, they give me something like love, and I know them on a first name basis, and we actually touch each other. We actually give each other hugs, and it's literally unheard of, because these people are invisible largely.
You usually
And
go
I
out of
know
your way to
them
walk
all.
around them, right?
Yeah, and this is the most peaceful living experience I've had living in the city of Detroit.
Amazing.
And the place is called the Dog House, and it looks like a dog house. And I just would like for you to come, and I want to introduce you to the people, because they make this living for me magnificent.
Let's make it happen.
And
Wait, Tracy, Eric's going to be here in March, and you are number one on our priority list to come and see and to spend some time visiting. And, we joke that Erik is sort of the filmmaker and I'm the rainmaker. I am I'm actively raising money to get Lemonade told. But here's really the plan, at least in my eyes, is we want to finish Lemonade Detroit. We currently have a 17-minute short that's really well put together, but it's old news. It's time to come and make some news stories. So that's the starter. But then we feel like people have had episodic relationships with Detroit, right? So kind of come in, come out, tell that short story. And we want to spend some time in the city. I'm in the city, Erik's in Texas, and our union is about sustainability. It's about how do we stay. And so I'd love to see us tell stories, not just 1 year, but 2 years, 5 years out, about what's happening. We know that it's not a perfect science. We know that it takes time for people to build capacity. But at the end of the day, let me just tell you personally that when I look at Lemonade Detroit, and when I hear Chaz Miller talk about, I weep every time Chaz talking about something devastating that happened to him and just how he doesn't want to leave the city. That's how I feel. I don't want to leave. I don't want to turn my back. I want my boy, I got a 2-year-old, I want him to grow up a different story, a different paradigm in the city, right? And back in the day, so Eminem, right, in this whole Chrysler thing, like, let me tell y'all some stories about Eminem at St. Andrews. And
Eminem at the Ebony Showcase Lounge.
Okay, and Eminem at Albans in the Cass Corridor. This was in the 90s when it wasn't hot and it wasn't sexy, and we missed an opportunity. We missed an opportunity, and part of it is because we thought we were missing something by not participating in mainstream. And I don't think this is unique to Detroit. I think Facebook and Twitter and these entities that allow us to have our own brand, Khalif, to the point of brand, are really about people being able to stand on their own story. Like, I don't want to be a part of the majority story, because that's not my truth. So we have an opportunity, and Erik, as a phenomenal filmmaker, has done, I mean, when I tell y'all, this dude has put Detroit on the map in a way that pays us so much respect, right? So much. It's the only reason why I would, in addition to my full-time job, a husband, a baby, a business, that I would say, brother, tell me what you need, and I'm there. So, you know, that's really about our brand, is what our individual stories are. And Erik Proulx, I salute you, my friend. You have done a great job by us.
All right, well, listen, we're going to wrap this up so I can get this package and get it on the air as well as online. Then you guys can tweet it out and share it with your people. And let's try to do this again maybe next week. I'll email everybody and see, and we'll choose a different topic or maybe something that's current, news related, and just keep it moving. I think this is a great format.
Love it.
All right.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure meeting you, and I hope to talk to you again soon. I got some wonderful, wonderful things to just share with y'all. And
Tracy, send us your information, okay?
okay, I will.
I'll send you her email address.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. Peace.